being social blind, being blind in any instinct, you're cutting yourself off from a huge range of body level wisdom and intelligence.
Yes.
And you fill in the blanks.
Like being comfortable with the sexual instinct feels like being more comfortable with the tension between polarities. It's almost like you have to be able to recognize polarities, but also be able to move between them. And there's kind of like a serpentine, like mercurial way that you can flip polarities, and that's what makes something erotic. That's what makes something hot.
The Big Hormone Enneagram.
I'm John Lekovich, 415, sexual self-pres, 458 trifix.
I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual, 9 with 1 wing, 974 trifix.
What up, it's Emeka. I'm an 8-wing-7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm a 3-wing-4 self-pres social, a 369 trifix.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I'm a social self-preservation 9-wing-1, 963 trifix.
If you like or hate us, make sure you go like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and make sure you leave us a review.
Welcome, Big Hormone. We are doing plugs again. Please buy my book. Please rate and review my book. It goes a long way. And Josh and I started Enneagram School, so sign up for upcoming stuff or to get recordings of the last thing we did, which is the enneagramschool.com. And Alexandra is on mute right now, but Alexandra has SaturnRule9.com where she does astrology and Enneagram readings for people.
Also wanted to mention Kristen Oberly and myself are doing a revised trifix booklet, that Kickstarter for that, raising money for that. And you can look for that, I think, by looking up Kristen on Ink Story Rebel on Kickstarter.
I'll put up the link
to
in the show description.
And also, the podcast she's doing with Kaisa and Sammy is actually really good. I don't know if you guys have gotten a chance to check it out, but absolutely worth a listen. They've got their second episode out now.
What's it called?
It's called Sinsomnia.
Insomnia. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I have a link to that as well. GAA Dark Arts Academy, learning how to become dangerously perceptive and skilled at seeing the types clearly. We recently did a class on some of the trifixes. We've done Flatline, we've done DJ, Bermuda, and we're going to do either Stockholm or Middle Manager next. We did a class recently also looking at some of the type twins, or how certain types can look similar and whether or not they're similar types or not. And we recently also started a Discord server for DAA members. You can find that in the members area. And if you've been typed by us or haven't been typed by us and you want to understand your typing better, the DAA library will help you get a deeper understanding of your typing. So you can get all that information at anniegrammer.com.
So I just wanted to have my friend Julie on here for people listening who are one of our most popular and beloved episode series last year was Julie doing the Divine Feminine. And so Julie and I were hanging out the other day, and she was telling me about a retreat, an in-person retreat she's leading. And so I thought people that are probably really hungry for stuff like that and might be really interested. So Julie, I don't know if you want to say hello and talk about it.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, John. So I'm teaching a retreat this summer, and it's called Alive in Your Medicine. And the idea is that everyone is medicine for something. Everyone and everything is medicine for something. And so it's about coming into greater contact with the medicine that you are. And it's not explicitly an Enneagram retreat. And, the Enneagram is foundational to everything I do. So we're going to be working with the centers. We're going to be working with the instincts. And really, and working a lot with breath, right? So that we can really receive, right? When we talked last year about the feminine, we talked about this fundamental way of receiving. So we'll be working with receiving the breath, receiving from nature. It's going to be at this really beautiful retreat center outside of Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah, so we'll have, time to be together and do what we can only do in groups, and also time in the afternoon to just enjoy the beautiful place that we'll be at. So yeah, if that's something that interests you, I would love to have you join me. And you can check it out further at riverbendcoaching.com.
And so first, I want to say that for listeners, like Julie and I went through the same breathwork school, and Julie's a certified professional breathworker. But I was curious, like when you mean everything's medicine, or that we're all medicine for each other, or something like that. What do you mean by that?
Is that like Emeka is medicine for sixes?
Maybe. We'll see.
Hey, you're muted, Emeka.
I said, don't put that curse on me.
Come on, sixes, we need you guys.
But do I need you?
You do.
That's the question.
You do. I was thinking about this because, often when I work with people, especially new people, and I have them lie down, and like the first thing I'm asking them to do is to sort of land themselves somewhere from innocence, right? From this kind of kinesthetic innocence, and not to be expecting anything, and not to be imagining or judging. And so, yeah, it's like, I was taught, and I'm sure, John, you were taught that, we always start with 8 in the Enneagram. And so it's like starting with this innocent heart rather than the lustful heart, I think is fundamental to what I do. So like, this is the way we're medicine for each other, right? So like, that life force of 8 is a beautiful thing for 6s. I'm married to an 8, and sometimes I ask him about stuff, and he's like, boom, boom, boom. Like, what are you even worrying about that for?
Yeah, what are you worried about?
Exactly. And then, there are ways that I tell him, like, yeah, you could be a little more still. That might be good for you.
Maybe.
So it's like some simple ways that we're medicine for each other. And like, even, people who work with plants, like, there's this idea that even when weeds grow up in a certain area, like, that those weeds are sort of responding to what's needed in the environment. Like, we might view them as weeds, but actually they're what can survive in that area and what that area needs to kind of grow and repollinate. So, we each have some medicine. And one of the things I was writing John about the other day is that often our wounds and our medicine are very tightly intertwined. And so, one of the things that breath can do for us is allow us to be more relaxed in everything that we've been given, and to really kind of transform some of the energy that feels challenging or difficult into something that's more powerful and more like medicine for ourselves and for others.
Cool. And I want to also, add, like, Julie, you and I have done a lot of in-person retreats and stuff over the years, I think we're kind of like used to that, but I'm sure a lot of people who are listening haven't done any kind of in-person retreat stuff. So, like, what could somebody who's never done something like that kind of expect, or maybe experience that you can't through podcasts or reading or something like that? Like, what's the difference between in an in-person event?
Well, there's a real we're energy fields, all of us. We're energy fields. And so there's like a real sense of something palpable when a group of people get together with an intention to be present. Even like when I do group breathwork online, it really kind of, there's something larger that gets created that carries people. And so, that's one of the reasons to do group work, is that it's really great to do individual work or to do self-study. And, we're fundamentally relational creatures, even if social is your blind spot. We are never not in relationship. And so to kind of consciously be in relationship with other people, to all be working together, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I'll say for me, Julie and I went to the same breathwork school, and it wasn't just a breathwork school, it was a lot more than that, and went through a lot of different stuff, both together and separate. And, the teacher of that school was a 2, and for me, it was really crucial and important to get out a lot of my comfort zones, because I was doing a lot of there's just something about, especially as a withdrawn type, having to be in the presence of other people, to work on yourself, to be seen in certain ways. And, not forced is not the right word, but challenged, I guess, to access parts of myself that if I'm just hanging out with my friends or whatever, I don't have to pull out of myself. I don't have to be as heartfelt. And, to be with strangers or relative strangers' vulnerabilities is also like a really interesting thing. And so it also does create a lot of deep connections that it's just shocking how like shallow most people's relationships are. And so to have these places where you can go really deep are pretty special and rare. So and Julie's an amazing teacher. Julie and I taught together a lot, and we done retreats together. And so I've never been to Asheville, but I'm sure it's awesome. So if anybody's curious, just hit her up.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say one more thing about that, part of our culture's emphasis on individualism means that like we all get locked in our own space and we think we're the only ones who feel X, Y, or Z. And so it is really powerful to sort of be in the presence of other people and to see like, oh yeah, like I'm not the only one who feels this, and like, wow, this person's experiencing that. And we do learn that we're not alone. Like, our configuration is specific to us, but there's a lot more that we have in common than we think. And that kind of can relax any sense that like, I'm uniquely messed up.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So riverbendcoaching.com, right?
Riverbendcoaching.com, and you could write me, Julie, at riverbendcoaching.com.
And what are the dates for that?
It's August 31st through September 4th, so it's over Labor Day weekend.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks.
And you guys have an idea of what to talk about? Because I have a few that are kind of vague, but potential.
We could just, piggyback on any of the ideas that we've been riffing on for the last month or so. Whatever you got. If there's
what have
juice,
you got
let's
on
go
your
for it.
bullet points?
Yeah, it's kind of a riff on what we've been talking about, but I was participating on your Discord, and there were it was like a whole bunch of sexual blinds talking about
That's all everyone is.
attraction.
Mhm.
And it was really, really interesting. Like I talked first. All right, let me trace my thinking. So I have a client, and she is a social self-pres 9. We've been working on integrating her blind spot and like practicing having her notice people from an attraction point of view. And she said she started to notice like, oh, there's a difference between finding somebody like attractive and being attracted.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
Right.
one of the things that was shocking to her that I told her was, you're going to find very few people genuinely attractive. You're going to be genuinely attracted to very few people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been a thing. But she used this phrase to describe how she had determined attractiveness, which was, she called it a weird algebra, where it was kind of like they fit certain things, like they're pleasant to look at, like they're, handsome or pretty or whatever. And, maybe like they check off certain boxes. Like there was somebody that she was interested in who she started recognizing had this kind of punk aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And she was finding the punk attitude that came with the aesthetic attractive, but not necessarily the human being that was using that attitude. And it was like kind of a fascinating revelation for her.
Mm.
And I thought weird algebra just like stuck in my head. Like that's what. So then I asked people in the shit show, and so I asked shit show if they resonated with that weird algebra thing. And the girls, yes. And then Kiernan described as a male that it's not, that's like secondary, and that what happens first is there's this kind of like, is she just like hot enough to like, I could like masturbate her, you know what I mean? Like I could just kind of like have that level of just, she's pretty enough or attractive enough, and then it gets into the algebra thing. But even still, in both cases, it's like the sense of attractiveness is very, it's like very distant, or it's like it's like assembling attractiveness from factors that are outside of oneself and not like really coming from the inside.
It sounds like energetically angular. You know what I mean? As opposed to serpentine or something. The idea of algebra. I'm seeing like squares and shit.
I can't even.
But it's like an assemblage of like outer squares, and so it's like you're putting the shapes together, but they're not coming from maybe a little bit, but not coming from like an inner body felt sense. And so then, I think riffing on so I wrote something and then I threw it in the Discord, and then people talked about it, asked questions about being sexual blind. And then I like did something else, and I came back to like 200 messages on Discord or people talking, and it was like all these people talking about like sexual blindness, and I don't even remember specifically what they were saying, but it just felt so
Foreign.
All those words, yes, and
because I was just, as you were explaining this, I was like, this must be what the sexual instinct feels to sexual blind people, because it's not computing. Like what you're trying to articulate doesn't make sense. Like I have more to say, but that's just my initial like body reaction to what you're saying.
And that's part of what I mean when I'm saying angular. I'm saying it at the level of the body.
Yeah.
Like that you can't do like right angles in the body. You know what I mean? I'm imagining
Trying to make computations.
Right.
Oh, I see. Like an exactness, like a precision.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because the
Or
feeling
like
of
formulaic.
the feeling of attraction is that there is something inherently like a chemical reaction. And so the idea that someone is attractive enough to masturbate to doesn't make sense in the sense that it's like either someone does it for me or they don't, and it has nothing to do with whether they're attractive enough. It's like is the chemical reaction between me and this person triggering an arousal response for me? And some people can be really attractive, and that mix is just not doing anything.
Yep. Totally. Yep.
Yeah, it feels like observational is for some reason the word that I keep using. Like even the idea of like looking at someone and decide, like the deciding is still, there's still an analytical process to that.
Right.
So it's not like feeling like your sense of effectiveness, but it's like a process of like, do I approve? Is she hired for the job or not?
Yeah, it's like deciding instead of it's just happening or it's not. Yeah.
And so a couple things that came up for me were, there's more to say on what we're talking about, but also just came up for me of like trying to describe attraction, because and like what that experience is, because we use that a lot, and I don't know, it is kind of hard to pin down. And I mean, even speaking for myself, being social blind, even though it's like, oh yeah, attraction, duh, there are ways that being social blind, kind of like our metaphor that we used last time about like having the lights on or off. Being social blind, being blind in any instinct, you're cutting yourself off from a huge range of body level wisdom and intelligence.
Yes.
And you fill in the blanks when you don't have that awareness, and you project and you bring in your object relations and you bring in all this stuff. And so being social blind, there are ways that I was like, oh yeah, this is attraction, but it was also kind of full of fucked up junk from my own psychology. And there's a phenomenon that's been really kind of funny or amusing or interesting for myself, being with Alexandra and how attracted I am to her, where we've run into there were different women that I like found various levels of attractive, just like, oh yeah, she's cute or whatever. I remember we running into some of these women. Like, I'll tell Alexandra, like, I hope this doesn't trigger you, but like, I used to find this girl like really cute, and now that we're together, I'm like, I can't believe I ever thought she was cute. Like,
Yeah.
because my sense of like what attractiveness is just like, it's just changed and had more to do with not just social, like, oh, Alexandra's really nice, but it's just like there's more there, and so that's like an interesting thing too, because it's not just like, hey, we have a sexual instinct, let me tell you about attraction, but also that there's things that sexual types and sexual middles aren't getting as well. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
I just thought this was like, I know I'm being very long-winded, but I thought this was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, because the thing you said earlier, that each instinct has a large dimensional language, and so if you're dominant in an instinct, you're aware of how much nuance and dimension you could explore in that instinct, and so you're invested in exploring those dimensions, and so as a sexual type, like, I'm still discovering different facets and dimensions of what I'm attracted to, and there's an element of, I know that the possibilities are so wide and there's different ways that it can go, like, and so as a social type, Alexandra, I'm sure that there's all these different dimensions of the social instinct and social dynamics that it feels like an endless exploration that you could discover, you could learn, you could add, and it's no different for, I think, all the instincts.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, even going back to John's original, I don't know, just like thing that he wanted to share about that weird formula, or weird, what did you call it? What did she call it?
Algebra.
Weird algebra? Yeah. Weird algebra. I've noticed, just being in like chats and being in conversations, and even just like my own like history, is that algebra is still using social signifiers to like replace the sense of effectiveness. And something I was thinking about, I read something in the Discord, it just like really weirded me out. It was like the phrasing of it was just like very icky to me. And I don't want to just like go into what that was, because whatever. But I was thinking that, we talk about blind spot and how we are blind in that instinct, and of course that's true. But what happens when we do like develop a certain sense of awareness of it? I think there still is the impulse to go without. Like there's still, and especially when we're like triggered or something, it's not that we like become blind to it. And I obviously know that blind is like a very accurate way to say that. But I do think there's a way that people kind of like know the danger, and they choose to just like supersede that danger with more of their comfort. Maybe I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but I'm thinking of like self-pressed blinds, that they will just go without their sense of self-regulation, their sense of like autonomous self-regulation in order to stay in engagement, and how they can then look at two instincts that like have to be engaged, and they can see it as like very, very intense, when really it's just like a dependency, because they refuse to like engage alone. They like refuse to self-regulate on their own. Yeah, does that make sense? That was kind of related, kind of.
There were a lot of ideas, but that last part was very well said. But I'm kind of, you were talking about how people re-abandon their blind spot.
Yeah.
Did you mean in the context of trying to integrate it, or?
Yeah, I was admittedly trying to jog like a thought that I had, and it just didn't work all the way. So we'll see if that comes back with more fullness.
But I just thought like, like just the sense of like, what does it mean to actually be attracted to somebody, or like, what are the metrics, or like, what levels can one be attracted to another, and where is it within the realm of sexual, where is it in the realm of social, where is it in the realm of self-pres? All those kind of things are kind of interesting, because as you were saying, Emeka, it's like this, like, where do I put that? So we're talking about like, we always talk about attraction on this pod, and then for somebody listening, it's like, has struggled in their sexual blindness with that, to be like, attraction, like
Yeah, it must feel like to hear us talking about it, because it seems like, when I talk about attraction, there's so many different colors and different facets, and there's different ways that you can be attracted to someone. And so it feels like I'm talking about something that's assumed, but it's not. Like, And when I see people kind of respond to the things that we talk about, it always feels like being flattened. Like all that nuance, all that dimensionality is just, oh, so it's about like hooking up with someone out of your relationship, or it's about, you know, like sort of like reduce it to some event, versus, you know, this sort of chemical way that you are provoked by someone else, and the way that your boundaries can get mutated by somebody else. And I mean, the thing that you said about you realizing that people that you were attracted to before, that you didn't feel the same, or you didn't think they were cute anymore, that's what the sexual instinct can do, is that someone alters your whole attraction architecture, in the sense that, and this has been like a story for me, is that there was a period of my life where I was really attracted to an Indian girl, and all I could see was Indian girls for 2-3 years. And that became like the most attractive type for me. And I had a different phase because someone got into me and their sort of chemicals infected me. And it's like, now I can only see with the eyes of the thing that I'm hooked into. That's kind of what I guess what's so risky about the sexual instinct. It infects you, and it changes your organs, you know?
Yep. Alexander rearranged my guts. She hit the back walls of my heart and rearranged my guts.
And that's kind of like the narcissism of sexual types, is that I'm going to infect you to the degree that the apparatus for feeling attraction for someone else is permanently altered. So
it's another spot to me where drugs as a metaphor is good for sexual. It's like a certain person is a really specific designer drug, and you go onto another person, or you think about a past person, and they didn't hit that same exact high that has a certain, you know, blend of whatever it is, whether it's adrenaline and dopamine, or, you know what I mean, just all of that kind of stuff.
Or if you do drugs, a particular drug long enough, your ability to get high on another drug is greatly or completely diminished.
Right.
Like if you're addicted to a certain drug, then all the other ones sort of pale in comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah, now my drugs are very soft and fluffy.
I can't tell you guys how many times a day John makes Alexandra's a soft woman jokes. It's like 5,000 times a day. I'll be doing nothing, and he comes out and he's just like, "Well, what are you doing? You just being soft?" I'm just sitting down.
Just existing.
Just existing.
I'm just sitting down, and this is not a thing right now.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything.
She's my drug, so I gotta like gotta smell her, gotta touch her, and just like
take another hit.
Someone in that Discord asked me, like, their question was like, all right, if there's like a desire or drive to merge in sexual, what happens after the merging? You know, like, is it just like staying and merging? And you know, and I, in my, you know, I pointed them to my book and stuff where it's like sexual drive couples, the drive to merge and drive to separate. And so, you know, there is this like, boom, coming together, and then sort of like you're rearranged or you're transfigured or transformed in some way, and then it's kind of like peeling off so that you can kind of reconstitute yourself and then come back. And you know, there's this kind of it's part of like massaging the ego boundaries. I wrote this as like I'm working on potentially another book. It's like just a dumb overview of the whole Enneagram, and I said something. I'm just going to read from what I wrote. And people related to this that I sent in these different chats. That's why I'm reading it. But sexual blind spot means that despite the desire to merge, the personality is always going to be at a certain distance from others, because there will be a sense of the personality being somewhat like an egg shell that cannot crack. A sexual instinct in the blind spot position of the stacking seems like sexual energy is going to be too messy, too chaotic, too violating, and too inciting of irreversible change to achieve the aims of the dominant instinct. Thus, the desire to merge or to be wholly, or to be whole is totally undermined. But an integrated sexual drive provides a person with a discernment of who their body and psyche really want to merge with, instead of convincing themselves to settle. And so basically like that like sense of like the uncrackable egg thing, I think is like what a lot of sexual blind people suffer from. And that the idea, at least, or the, not idea, but one of the guiding functions of the sexual drive is this kind of keeping that, like, not a hard shell or a brittle shell, but something that has a little bit of elasticity and movement in it, and reinvention and creativity in it. What do you think, baby? I see you pondering.
No, I mean, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it kind of relates to the conversation we had last time where we were talking about like the lights on or off. That was the first time I'd ever thought about it that way, and the idea that, or the reason I was resisting the lights off is just because I just didn't think there was longevity past the lights being off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if things get like remixed and reconstituted, then what I signed up for is now something totally different, and I might not like that. So there was always just like a boundary against having around any kind of like metamorphosis, which is interesting because I don't know that the sexual instinct is like consciously trying to, like, you know, I mean, growth is another way to say that. I don't mean like personality growth necessarily, but sort of like the, you know, like fields need to be like burned in order for like new growth to happen.
It's sexual instinct to me is particularly mercurial. I associate it with like Hermes and that kind of trickster energy that can, it's fairly unreliable and it can flash up hot and then just go down, and it's sort of, there's no reliable sense to it in a way.
Yeah.
Alexander's right, though, that there's a growth element to it. I mean, just like self-pres is most, you know, it's always growing something, you know, and health improving, and then social is always getting more skillful and attuned and connected and stuff. And so, but it's just like the sexual instincts version of growth is like not as linear and not as
linear.
Not as
and
like
it's not as like preconceived, I don't know, like premeditated maybe.
Yeah.
You don't know what the chemistry is going to make in any moment.
And not even like in between two people, but like, I mean, like the sexual instinct can show up in like going for the job, you're really wanting to go out, you know, that kind of stuff where like you don't really know what's going to happen, but you're going to do it. And so, yeah, I would think that growth in social instinct or in just like self-pres blind stackings is just approached with more premeditation, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I don't know if I'll agree with myself tomorrow, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. But it's just approached a lot more cautiously and intentionally, where sexual does have a bit more like, you know, I'm going to jump in with my eyes closed and just like see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of it is when I think of growth with the sexual instinct, or what kind of growth that the sexual instinct provides, is that even not in a relationship, just the sexual instinct as of just existing neutrally, as I need to be hooked into the thing that has a potential to transform my boundaries, or a sense of something. Maybe is an idea that if I jump into this idea, it feels like it has the potential to change or recharge the boundaries of something that I'm working on. And it feels like if that potential isn't felt, that sense of polarity isn't felt, my personality will try to find ways to manipulate my situation to get that sense. And this is not happening on an intellectual level. It's happening on a body level, whereas it's like, this is the oxygen that I need all the time. And so what sexual types are always trying to do is to find or create polarities, because that sense of tension between me and something else that has potential to completely mutate my boundaries is what, like, all right, that's what feels like I'm alive. That's what feels like something is happening. And so that doesn't necessarily lead to any consistent building or any stability, because, you know, it's who knows what the next thing that's going to do that, or where it's going to take you. But to your point, John, like, there is like I experienced something that had this sort of self-mutating experience, and now I need to, you know, exhale, inhale sort of thing, where now I have to integrate that. And so even in a relationship, you can go through periods of we went through something that transformed an aspect of our relationship, and then you get to another equilibrium where you're seeing each other and there's some stability, and then here's another thing that's going to, transform an aspect of our relationship. And so I look at my friendships that way. Like, they stay interesting because there are these periods where we're, every now and then having some kind of thing that transforms the dynamic, but doesn't really prevent us from still being connected.
It's like the Esther Perel thing. I think there's some, basic formula. Attraction plus obstacle equals desire. So there's like continually some new thing that comes up that means you both have to reconstitute or have to push through something, bust through a membrane or something. And so it's not like a steady, like with social and self-pres, there's more of a steady trajectory of going up a ladder, building something or something like that.
Do I bust through your membrane, baby?
I knew it.
So that one.
I know. I saw both of like the corners of your mouth turned up. Like, God, here we go.
Glimmer in my eye.
yeah, just a twinkle in John's eye, and then I could tell when Emeka also caught on of like, oh, John's moment is coming.
Just loading up. Yep. She's subjected to so many of these dumb questions.
Cocked and loaded.
David, please, don't feed the beast.
So I agree with all that because, like, so one of the things that's been interesting, I work with a lot of sexual blind people who, like, because of my book, come to me specifically to work on their sexual blind spot. And, like, I've been working with a number of women who are head types, who are sexual blind, and they'll self-describe their minds as very masculine. Like they're very, like just highly competent, really like that, like piercing, whatever kind of intelligence, and that they can, in dating and stuff, really struggle because they like intimidate men and all this kind of stuff like this. And one of the things that's been interesting is, all the instincts are in the body. And so as we've worked to get more in touch with the body, and this is not me just imposing my interpretations onto them, this is like co-emergent through our sessions, but like recognizing that as they get more in their body, there's like a more of a pronounced feminine energy in them that is still, it's like their minds are still as, quote unquote masculine by their own words or whatever. I'm not, but it's held in more of a female body and like a feminine, like, I mean, they've always been feminine, but it's like, it's got this extra quality to it. And one of these women was shared something I thought was very interesting, where she said something about how she is like a diehard feminist, but she started to realize through getting more into her body, into her sexual instinct, that a lot of her view, her way of embodying her feminism was in a kind of gender neutral, polarity neutral way, and reacting to what she said was maybe her father's view of femininity, which was weak or something, and so not going to be that, and so now she, like, I don't know where she's at presently in this journey, but like last time we talked, she was talking about how she's recognizing like a feminism, and I'm not trying to be like, oh, feminists should be more feminine or something kind of bro talk that. I'm like, this is just me trying to recount her experience of, like, as I understand it and what's come up together. But it's been an interesting thing where she's learning to hold polarity, whatever that polarity is, because like, in a real alive sexual instinct dynamic like Alexander and I have, like, I'm not just like, I'm the masculine one and she's the feminine one. Like, it switches, and it's mercurial and organic, and sometimes I'm like, take me, baby, and whatever. But it's like a place, instead of having kind of more like a neutral place, it's like being a the body being a house for polarity to show up and to dance in and to be more hands off about where that polarity wants to go, and that it can hold these other centers that can have their own flavor and characteristic, but that in the instinct in the body, it's got its own thing going on. Is that making sense?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's partly. I don't know if I'm going to have the words for it, but I can imagine that kind of coming into the body that you're talking about, specifically, let's say, even in the example you're talking about with, say, social self-pres 6 or whatever, that coming into that feminine aspect or energy in the body in a really planted way, that actually is much more fully embodying personal power, like just real, force and self-assertion, right? And so there's the feminism right there. You know what I mean?
Right. And, and this is also been true with sexual blind men I've worked with too. It's, that they're feeling like it's interesting, like finding a different kind of masculinity. And it's interesting because like when I would teach friends to dance, I would always try to like male friends like to dance. Often the thing that would come up, is like a lot of rigidity in the pelvis in men, and a lot of like inflexibility, and the fear is of being feminine or being perceived as feminine, right? Like if I dance and I just look like I'm just like losing myself to the music, I'm not sexy at all, and all this other shit. What I started teaching is like that is sexy for a woman, is to like kind of be possessed by the music or whatever, but for men who like, you have to have the feminine in your body, and you have to like have the masculine part like in like being a container for that feminine inside, but it's like your hips do have to like lose themselves to the music, but like maybe this other part of your body is in command of all that, and it's like making room for that feminine to express itself in the body. So it's like, to dance well, at least my experience as a man, is you have to have both polarities in your body. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like being comfortable with the sexual instinct feels like being more comfortable with the tension between polarities. It's almost like you have to be able to recognize polarities, but also be able to move between them. And there's kind of like a serpentine, like mercurial way that you can flip polarities, and that's what makes something erotic. That's what makes something hot. And I've recognized that, paying attention to the things that really get me going is that there are multiple polarities, and gender is just one polarity, but there are personality aspects that might represent polarities for you, but it's not like you're parked on one side of that polarity. It's that you're aware and engaging with the tension between opposites, and like dancing and comfortable with it. And it feels like sexual blindness is flattening or not comfortable with the tension between polarities, and so you either occupy like a neutral middle to not experience sort of like the tension, because the tension is what kind of like gets that going, that magnetism,
and the tension flipping too.
Yes,
yeah.
And so that, I think, on a body level, feels uncomfortable. It feels like, oh, what's going to happen? That sense of like, this could go whatever which way. So you either park on one side of the polarity, or you just sit in the middle where you don't have to experience any of that tension. And maybe there's a way to get people to feel that tension between polarities, be able to flip back and forth between certain polarities that we can identify. If that ever even makes sense to anyone who's sexual blind. I might still be speaking a different fucking language. Does that make sense, Alexandra?
I think it makes sense. I think it still would need to be like teased out a little more, and I'm not really sure how to do it at the moment. There's a way that the tension you're speaking about, like, it might be interesting for sexual blinds, even like the triple reactive types or whatever, but there might actually be a way where sexual blinds need to be comfortable with a certain level of disagreement. It's probably going to feel like disagreement, actually. I don't mean like social disagreement, but I mean like, oh, we're not trying to like be aligned, which is what
Mhm.
social
Yeah,
is.
right. Mhm.
Or we're not trying to like make each other feel safe or make each other feel comfortable, which is what self-pres is. Like
Mhm.
sexual is that kind of disruptive force. And so like to feel disrupted all the time is, not the most comfortable.
Mhm.
That's a big part of just, I don't know. To me, sexual instinct banter is kind of, I mean, it's as unconscious, but at the same time, I'm making a point of disagreeing and
Mhm.
saying the opposite of what the person thinks I would say right now.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah,
Nan-
that's why the three of you are so obnoxious.
Yes, exactly.
Nancy
Why
was
I'm
recounting.
an angel.
Yeah, right. Okay. Nancy was recounting her experience as a sugaring, and these guys paying her a lot of money and what they were asking for, and a lot of them just wanted to just get really demeaning and just call her a piece of shit. And she said that one guy was just like, oh, this is all women are good for, and just like going really in and just
All in. Yeah.
all in. And I was like, okay, why is that? Because part of what they were doing by all that shit talk was creating a sexual edge or a sexual tension,
Mhm.
and that, that can be like
An
looked at as
opposition.
yes,
Yeah.
not at
That's a
a
polarity.
that's erotic.
Right.
And you get all these BDSM sort of scenarios where people create like in BDSM where it's like someone who's practically beating somebody else up, and people can experience a polarity that way. So just like sexual blind ways of trying to create a boxed polarity to create
Yeah.
sexual tension in a compartmentalized way that isn't sort of like the free forming way that integrated sexual instinct would do so, which would be more risky because it's not like, oh,
Right,
it's
it
this
would be more
person that I'm
risky.
paying money to talk shit to one day on a weekend that I'm
Right,
So
exactly.
fucking weird.
Right, exactly. And
Yeah.
even BDSM has all of these like kind of rules. Kind of what's coming up is that like those kinds of, I don't know, avenues for lack of a better term, are ways to kind of safely release a polarity you're already holding inside of you, but you don't have the social like
Right.
container to do, it's socially inappropriate to do so. So these are containers where you can let that part of you that is actually pretty polar to what you're experiencing on a day-to-day level out in a healthy, like safe, appropriate way that's not going to like fuck up your life, because that's what sexual binds are afraid of.
And that's why it comes out in that setting of, for
Yeah.
example, sugaring, right? It's like we're in this square where we do this thing, right? And then the rest of my life is not this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They would shit talk her and then they'd have sex.
They'd have sex and then they take care of her afterwards. So it was very much agreed that, hey, I'm paying you, so I'm
Yeah.
going to say demeaning things to you. And
John pays me for the same thing.
Except I say really
for free.
sweet things.
He's pretending he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right.
I just say
try,
really
John.
sweet things.
Let's try, John.
I was like, so there's a market for the shit talk and the roasting.
That blows my mind. I
Yeah.
didn't actually know that was that was a part of the thing.
Yeah, dom,
Well, it's
like a
kind of like
dominatrix.
it's the dominatrix thing. It's a different.
But wait,
version of
she would
that.
shit talk them, or they would shit talk her.
But it's the reverse. It's just
I've
yeah.
never heard of that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's so fucking weird.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
got to be like, I imagine that and granted, I'm not any kind of professional on this, but you have to imagine that it's like, okay, wait, let me make sure I'm understanding it. They would shit talk her.
Yeah.
Yeah. They
Okay.
would say demeaning
So-
things to her, like, you're not good for anything.
No.
You're only good for
You're
sex.
just good for
You're
sex.
just,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
just,
yeah.
Which is
blah, blah,
true.
blah.
The Esther Pro she like kind of fuck off, David. You know what I
All
mean?
women.
I'm
All
trying to
women,
create
that's all they're
sexual
good
tension on this call.
Help me, help me. You can hear me, help me.
No one's coming to help you. You're lost.
Whatever, I'm the real Dom here, so.
True.
What I was going to say was Esther Perel kind of talks about it. I'm for sure going to butcher it because it's been a while, but she kind of talks about, I wonder with these men, if they're like waking, it's definitely not, they're not asleep, whatever. If they're like normal like day-to-day lives, right, that does not have the sexual component just built into it, is probably there's probably a lot of pressure to be like very polite. There's probably a lot of tension that comes from like not getting to
Totally.
release a certain amount of energy in like a healthy way.
Mhm.
You know, so chances are that, and granted, I don't know if these men are like in relationships. It's possible. I feel like likely that they are. I don't know, whatever.
Most of them were single.
Okay. But I imagine that maybe they feel constricted by the amount of like etiquette that they have to uphold.
But-
And so this is the compartmentalized way to like assume their own sexual instinct, which is disruptive.
Mhm.
I don't know. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
It's kind of I feel like we're towing a line here.
They're
But
they
whatever.
might have been single, but they're probably the kind of guys who are in the workplace just constantly,
Mhm.
you know, and so it's got that a similar, what would you call it, boundary around it as far as, you know, what's allowed as far as
Yeah.
interaction.
You know, I think a lot of these guys are paying for a sense of, all right, I'm paying you, so there's no risk. I get to say the thing that I've always wanted to say. And,
Yep.
you know, I get to be the sexual beast that I've, you know, wanked off to being,
Mhm.
but I couldn't be in my
Right.
regular life.
Basically learning how to be disruptive.
Yeah.
Like be
Mhm. Yeah.
obnoxious, like the fucking
Right.
three of you.
Mhm.
I'm not obnoxious. I don't know what you're talking about.
Please.
It's an interesting topic because articulating the sexual instinct is always going to be one of our biggest challenges because it is a slippery idea and most people are sexual blind, and there's always going to be a sense that it's never clear enough. I mean,
Yeah.
just imagine how hard
Yeah, right.
how hard of a time we've had trying to like grasp the social instinct, and even as we get to grasp it every year, it feels like I'm starting over.
Mhm.
Like I have to like
Yeah.
relearn the social
That-
instinct.
I mean, that's part of what I'm getting at too. It's archetypal when I'm suggesting, you know, that or associating sexual with, you know, Hermes and trickster and all of that kind of energy, that mercurial stuff. Like even the definition eludes, you know, form. It's like
Mm.
shapeshifter kind of energy where you're never quite going to be able to pin it to the wall on a piece of paper, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, like I mean,
Yeah.
the point of it is to not be boxable,
Yeah.
Right.
but the way that somebody sexual blind needs to experience it or to understand it is experientially,
Mm-hmm.
which is about getting into their body and is about confronting, you know, like I have those little formulas in my book that are like, you know, if I'm, you know, sexual blind and social dominant, my fear is that I was going to be too sloppy or whatever, and I'm going to be ostracized and abandoned. So, like, you have to confront some of your dominant instincts' fears
Mhm.
around what the blind spot instinct will mean about the dominant instinct in order to kind of get that emotional barrier. You can't totally jump over it, but you get through it a little bit so you can get into a place where your body feels safe enough to experience the instinct as it is, you know?
Mhm.
Over the weekend, this is one of the things that me and John discussed as like an experiential example of the sexual instinct. And people have talked about, you know, their experience with porn. And I've said that is an extremely honest physical reaction. I mean, you might search for certain porn and you might think that someone's attractive, but the porn that you really get off to, not because you convince yourself to get off to, that your
Yeah.
body couldn't help itself, is
That's the
getting
truth serum.
that is what you want to fuck.
Yeah.
The final tab.
Yeah. Final tab.
You know,
Peak
it's
tab.
it's almost like you're watching porn and you're trying to convince yourself to, oh, maybe I should, you know, get off to this person. But then you come across a video or something that your body has a mind of its own and makes you do it.
Yeah.
That's your
there's-
sexual instinct right there.
There's a way that sometimes I wonder if, I'm sure that this is true, but I guess just to say it, I wonder if there's a lot of sexual blinds that see their social. Okay, so there's the theory is like you have the thing that you're attracted to, and then people either approve of it or disapprove of it with their own social instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I had a better way of saying that in my head, and then it just went away. But it's something like the social instinct allows you to justify or not justify your sexual impulse and your
Right.
sexual urge and your sexual actual attraction. And so maybe that's the difference. Like you're into that, like, you know, maybe thing you don't socially approve of yourself, but that's what you're into.
It's like post-nut clarity, and you're like, what have I done?
Yeah. Yes.
Why did I come to that?
Oh my God, I'm a horrible person, or I'm a fucking freak or something like that.
Midget
Your sexual
threesomes.
instinct.
Oh my God.
Well, it does, like for the sexual blinds listening, it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, the sick thing is what I really want.
No,
It's
of
like,
course not.
it can be more just like, oh yeah, like my girlfriend is blonde, but I'm always getting to this, you know, women with dark hair is like what's really calling me.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Something like
Sure.
that. It could be doesn't have to be like, like, oh yeah, the, you know.
Oh
Could be
yeah, I
cocky
actually
bitch.
need an electrocution or
Yeah,
something.
something like that. That's what'll get you off. No, but it's just like, there's all
Incest
those
milf.
ways a mind can interfere or judge or whatever, or like be like,
Stepsister.
yeah, exactly. I don't get, that fucking shit is so crazy.
Stepmoms.
Yeah,
Good one.
I don't know, but yeah, it's like there's like, you know, physical types or there's energetic types or something like that, and it's like, what really gets you there?
I mean, we've said it probably a million times before, but there's one angle on the instincts is that they're mortal enemies of each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like self-pres also, besides social, can have its own prejudice against sexual instinct. You know,
Mhm.
like how it might drain resources or energy or cause, you know, financial instability if you indulged or whatever.
Yeah, there's polarity on a personality level. Like there's certain personalities that you might find attractive, and then there's polarities on a body level. So you like that you get triggered or you get provoked by certain bodies, and then people can get attracted to each other on a social level too. Like this person is attractive to me because I like what kind of person they are. Because I mean, we've talked about that, where you can be really turned on by somebody that you don't like their personhood, or you're turned off by their
Right.
personhood in some weird way. So attraction is a really mysterious thing. And also you could meet someone that you're attracted to that doesn't fit anything that you've been attracted to before, you know, starts a whole new, because everything you've ever been attracted to, there was a first person that represented the first time that you were attracted to that thing and began maybe a new pattern for you until the next time you meet somebody else who it's like, I didn't know I could be into this. So that's kind of like the unpredictable nature of really paying attention to how you're being affected by sexual tension with a certain polarity.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know I'd be into fucking MILFs. I would not have predicted that for myself.
Now you're on a roll. That's your
No,
pattern.
That role has come to an end.
Oh,
Knock on wood. It's just only in the porn world. That's it. It's not
okay.
happening in the real
You're putting
world
it in
anymore.
a box.
In the
Sure.
box, yes.
Amika, you don't have to socially justify yourself. You can just be into MILFs, you know?
Yeah.
I'm into MILFs, but I'm not into MILFs in my actual. Not trying to raise any kids.
Sure, dude. All right.
You pay the MILF and you do it in this one confined
Yeah.
space. MILF out.
You know, you can be a MILF without kids or wanting to be a mom. See, that's a distinction right there.
Oh.
It's not
I don't
about
know
the
about
children. It's about the energy of MILFdom.
Emeka's gonna play a
Okay.
MILF,
All right.
and part of the experience is that he has to wake her kids up and make them breakfast and get them ready for school.
Oh, yeah.
There-
Ready for school.
I don't want to be a father, but
Hey, Alexander, you know about this one reality show, MILF Manor?
Oh yeah.
I do not. No,
Oh, you need to check
You're
it
gonna
out.
know.
I
You're gonna
watched
know.
the whole damn season, man.
We're gonna
You
do.
watched
We
the
did.
whole scene?
It's horrible.
We're doing it for DAA. That's why.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Yeah, Joseph. This was Joseph's idea. So,
Yeah.
Oh my god, beautiful.
MILF Manor.
MILF
MILF
Manor.
Manor. It's a show.
Oh, man.
The
it's
premise
so
is
bad.
that a group of, I think, 20 mothers with their sons go to this reality TV show where the sons date other mothers and
Other
the mothers
mothers.
date other sons.
But they don't know that that's what's coming. Neither group knows
my
that that's what's
God.
coming.
Yeah.
And so
my
there's a
good Lord.
reveal on the first episode where they realize, oh my God, the sons realize my mother's here, and vice versa.
Do they hook up with each other?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, and so it's in
Oh.
front of their mother and in front of the son, right?
It's all happening.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my god.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna
That
type those
is-
people and
And
Yeah,
the
good
people are all
job.
just trash. I mean,
Oh,
there's just
yes. Well,
nothing
yes.
redeeming or
No,
interesting about
not at
any
all.
of them. They're just horrible.
Did they know that the show was called MILF Manor? Like how did you know?
Yeah, I don't
No,
know.
a lot of times they don't. A lot of times they're just like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to be on TV, and then you find out the premise of the show you're going to
Yeah.
be on.
God.
right
I think
before
they
it
just thought
starts.
they were going
Wild.
to do a dating show, just generic
Yeah,
dating.
Yeah, Alexander was
That's
saying
wild.
that-
What are the producers doing? Like, oh, we got to make sure that the mother-son combo shows up.
Hey, they're trying to-
And it makes a bunch of conflict, so it's perfect
Of course
for
it
reality TV. Yeah,
hey, this incest trend,
Yeah.
they're trying to fucking hop on the incest trend because there's money there.
that's it.
God.
Women who have the capacity to have children, but who do not have children. That's
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Oh,
my
okay.
bad. I thought when you
That's-
said mothers, I'd like to fuck. It included a woman that has given birth to a child.
You don't understand it. It's spiritually mothers,
Oh,
not
no, I
actual
understand.
mothers.
That's the main thing. Emika's thinking about the
Spiritually-
spirituality of the woman.
Mothers.
Spiritual.
Because that's where I'm
Yeah.
operating from. Okay,
Yeah,
Energetic
yeah,
MILF energy. Got
Energetic.
it.
Energetic.
high vibration.
vibrationally
Yeah.
MILF.
You're gonna find your Brazilian woman with MILF energy.
Yeah, with a
Yeah.
with a high vibrating ass.
when Emika was
God.
here, the entire weekend was talking about Brazilian girls. It was
So,
like,
you know-
that's it.
So, John, so Brazilian girls.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
seriously, like every 40 minutes, we would have a whole conversation. It was like really stimulating, really engaging. And we're talking about all of this like depth and like just juicy stuff. And then there would be a lull, and he's like, "Anyway, yeah, so Latinas. I think Brazil is.
Yeah,
We get it, dude."
We were sharing our appreciation for Latinas.
There was like some big realizations about the whole like Latina thing. It was
spiritual revelation.
spiritual revelations.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we did touch on it on the last pod. How like David talked about how like the why does the Latin culture have more sexual instinct? And he was like the Aztec
right.
culture or mythology has some connection to some Egyptian stuff that integrates sexual instinct more, and maybe the tropical climate also encourages more of an abundance mindset that is less like the Anglo-Saxon SPSO.
Right, capitalist, yada
Just
yada.
keep my own stuff, and we care about who's kid, who's the father or mother of the kid, that kind of stuff.
This might get a little into race science, but something I read, and I don't know how accurate this is, but I think it was actually in something that was like scientific, but it was something about how like there's curvier bodies, generally speaking, near the equator, and how the curvier body provides more surface area that like allows for heat regulation in a more efficient way or something like that. I don't know if that's true,
Right.
but
One's a sexual type with a 5 bigs.
yeah, exactly. And and so like our dear Latinas, like having the curvier bodies and stuff like that, like that might be part of it. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well.
It's not like there's any European country, I can't think of any, that's just churning out like curvier bodies.
No, because like when the body like in colder climates, when there's less curve, it does something about keeping more heat in the core.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's why if I again, I don't know if I'm making it like this is junk science or something like that, but it was like describing how like Inuit bodies have like they can be just kind of very not curvy, even if they're thick.
Right.
And because it has something, and same thing with like just Northern Caucasian, it's like because it has something to do with heat distribution.
That's a really good insight.
So
I've
you're
always
backing up
wondered-
your racism with science.
Yes.
Oh man.
All right, let's get out of here.
All right. Later.
All right, let her go.
Bye.
Bye.
God, crazy conversation. All right, bye guys.
Later. Bye.
Gel beri bal dudak akışına bırak. Gel beri bal yanak akışına bırak.